The best Sonic villain that everyone hates.
Sonic is one of those franchises that is divided by people who have different ideas on what makes it good. Some people like the comics that were written by the worst person alive. Some people like the mediocre 4Kids show that is only relevant because of nostalgia. Some people like the games that have a 30 on Metacritic because they were gaslit into thinking that they are good games. Some people also like to eat glue. People have their own reasons for liking stuff, and I'm not exactly an expert on the quality of Sonic lore in games, but one thing that is for certain is that people love to pretend that they are exactly like that, which is why the Sonic community on Twitter is the smelliest place imaginable. So, I'm not gonna act like the definitive voice for Sonic opinions. I'm gonna leave that job to those more annoying than me. I do think over time, people have grown a lot more forgiving of things in the franchise that did an insane amount of damage to the reputation of Sonic, whether it's specific characters or games altogether. And that's fine. If anything, I'm happy that we moved past the era of gaming review YouTubers telling people what to think about Sonic games.
Look at this monstrosity! Do you hear that music?
The song is
Team
peak.
says they've gone back to basics, but I still think they're full of
Now instead of doing that, they're just...
Oh. Ow.
racist. So now that the Dark Ages of Sonic have ended and the franchise is at a level of popularity that hasn't been seen in literal decades, I want to take this opportunity to defend a character that is universally disliked by people both in the fandom and outside of it. They're from one of the worst games in the series, they haven't been seen since that game, and they don't even appear in the comics. That's right, today we're talking about the Duke of Soleanna from Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. Actually, I lied. That's for another video. Instead, we'll talk about the second most hated character, Infinite.
I like Infinite, though.
We got trouble.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this game. It's called Sonic the Force Unleashed. That's not what it's called. Sonic Forces released November 7th, 2017 to a mixed reception from pretty much everyone. The game has only aged worse as time went on, and Sonic fans now consider it worse than Sonic 06. Guys, I get Sonic Forces is a bad game, but y'all are acting like this game kicked your dog. It's just a D-tier Sonic game at the end of the day. Saying that it's worse than Sonic 06 is reaching, I'm not gonna lie. With this game came many controversial game design choices, like retconning classic Sonic being a younger version of Sonic, and instead making it so that he's Sonic from another dimension. Why is classic Sonic in this game? Oh, yo, look at that, they brought Silver back. This guy can't catch a break. He debuts in the worst game ever made, and then they give him a second chance by putting him in the second worst game they have ever made. Let's see. They brought back a lot of classic villains like Metal Sonic, Chaos, and Zavok. What, you guys don't remember Zavok? He's from the hit game, Sonic Lost World. Oh, geez. You know what? Obviously, this game relied on dangling the nostalgia keys in front of fans' faces, hoping it would work. I don't blame them for doing so. It usually does. But Sonic Forces didn't perform well, and the only thing worth noting about it is that it leads to the existence of the IDW comics. And also the Twink Wolf. But one character from this game that I want to talk about in depth is the main villain, Infinite the Jackal. Hey, you guys want to know something that's funny, kind of cool?
like
Jackals in real life eat hedgehogs. That's how you know he's a good villain. Okay, where to begin? Infinite is one of the most interesting villains in the entire Sonic franchise. I realize that I'm the first person to say that sentence in probably a year, but I still think it's true. When Sonic Forces was released, one of the main complaints people had with the game was Infinite. They called him edgy, broody, bland, dark. Wait, I'm reading the complaints people had with Shadow back in 2010. Now, hang on.
No.
Oh, here we go. One of the main complaints people had with Infinite was that he was edgy, broody, bland, and dark. But revisiting his character made me realize that Infinite is actually the best part of Sonic the Force Awakens. That's also not the name of the game. The game is nothing to write home about, but it makes me upset that a character like Infinite isn't brought back and instead only gets a cameo in mobile games. He does technically die at the end of the game. Sorry, spoilers for the two people on Earth who care about Sonic Forces spoilers. His death is highly debatable though, especially since he is confirmed to still be alive in official Sonic channel art and Twitter takeovers. Look, all I'm saying is that if Eggman can survive all the shit he goes through, then Infinite can survive being trapped in a ring pop. Who even is
No,
Infinite?
literally.
Nobody asked that question, but I'm gonna answer it anyways. Infinite was originally known as Zero. Get it? Zero to Infinity? That's funny. I can't believe this game didn't sell well. He was the leader of a mercenary group known as the Jackal Squad. Him and his gang quickly gained a notoriety for raiding and profiting off bounties. Zero would gain the nickname the Ultimate Mercenary, and his squad members Ace, Spade, Jade, and Quatre are some of his closest friends who play an important role in the overall character arc Infinite has in Sonic Forces. Okay, I was lying. These are the only official renders of these characters and they don't even appear in the game. These aren't even their real names. They don't have official names. I just named them off the top of my head. These characters do appear in the Rise of Infinite comic, but only briefly. In the comic, Zero and his Jackal Squad try to raid Eggman's base in the Arsenal Pyramid, hoping to steal his equipment to fetch a profit. This plan ultimately fails as Eggman uses the power of his newly acquired Phantom Ruby to overwhelm the squad and essentially force them to become his minions. Zero tries to strike down Eggman, but ends up striking the Phantom Ruby instead, which shows him a vision of total anarchy at the hands of Eggman. It's implied that the Phantom Ruby ended up brainwashing Zero, and is why he is quick to join forces with Eggman without any hesitation. And I'm totally not saying this to excuse poor writing. At this point, it's become clear that Eggman is using the Phantom Ruby to manipulate Zero and by extension the Jackal Squad. When they are instructed to guard his facility in Mystic Jungle, they come into contact with Shadow the Hedgehog. Shadow attacks the facility and obliterates the Jackal Squad, with only Zero surviving the encounter. I cannot stress this enough. Shadow literally kills the Jackal Squad. I repeat, Shadow the Hedgehog kills 4 people. I know they use language like defeats or destroys because this is a E10 game, but the Jackal Squad is never seen again, and Zero is shown to be clearly distraught from the events that take place. Shadow killed them. If you're keeping track, you're not. I am. I'm pretty sure this is the only time in the series where Shadow has a confirmed Mobian kill count. Oh shoot, I have to explain what Mobians are? Okay. Mobians are a race of humanoids that take the form of anthropomorphic animals, entities who inhabit much of Sonic's world, coexisting with humans and other races such as the mystical Chow and the underdeveloped Mobini. I'm reading this off the Mobius Encyclopedia that is on fandom.com. So, take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. Basically, my point is that Shadow the Hedgehog is a
Shadow for
quadruple
doing
murderer,
that.
which is not very surprising. Zero at this point is angry, and his rage culminates in him wanting revenge. When he tries to ambush Shadow, he underestimates his power and is beaten easily. However, for some reason, Shadow spares Zero after calling him pathetic. Which is just cruel. Not only him calling Zero pathetic, but killing all of his friends and then choosing to let him live in the end so he has to live with the grief. Zero snaps after Shadow spares him, having an emotional breakdown and refusing to accept that he failed avenging his squad. He then falls into a spiral of self-hatred, and it's clear that his defeat, along with the death of his friends, would only eat away at his deteriorating mental state. Having already been under the influence of the Phantom Ruby, he agrees to be infused by a replica of it. After undergoing numerous experiments, Zero would abandon his name and become Infinite. With this newfound power and identity, he makes his presence known by killing E123 Omega. Okay, I say kill, but like Omega has been rebuilt before, and I doubt that anything is going to permanently put him out of commission. This encounter leads to the reunion of
Omega
Infinite
is a
and
robot.
Shadow. However, when Infinite expects Shadow to remember him, he doesn't.
A long-awaited reunion, and still you spout such nonsense. I am Infinite. You say you do not know me, and yet I remember you so very well. To you, it was simply another in a long list of Eggman bases you tore down without a second thought. I've only become what I am because of you, yet you don't remember. But I suppose that's the way it goes. It simply means that the old me was too weak, too pathetic to remember. And now you've become nothing more than an insect.
Okay, I'm gonna pause here, and I'm gonna talk about this, because I see this brought up a lot when people criticize Infinite's character. A lot of people make fun of the fact that Infinite unsuccessfully tries to make Shadow remember who he is, but also don't understand a lot of different factors at play here. Firstly, Shadow faces dozens of enemies every single day. It's already established that he has zero remorse or second thought with his actions, and him killing the Jackal Squad and injuring Zero was just another Tuesday for him. I think this says a lot more about Shadow's character than it does Infinite's. Shadow may not remember Infinite, but Infinite remembers Shadow. And that's really what matters. It's meant to showcase how Shadow's actions have consequences. What Shadow did ruined the life of Zero, so much to a point where he would essentially corrupt himself in order to become Infinite, leaving no trace of his old self behind. Also, yes, I am running with the theory that Zero and Infinite are two separate people. He's the Darth Vader of the Sonic universe. The second thing people don't take into
Yeah,
consideration
pretty
with this
much.
interaction. Look at the difference of these two. I don't blame Shadow for not recognizing him. I still find it odd that people blame every poor writing decision in Sonic Forces on Infinite when they either aren't bad writing decisions or arguments you can make for Shadow as well. Infinite would then trap Shadow in a fake reality before making his escape. When we see him again, he makes his presence known to Sonic while Eggman attacks the city. He uses his powers to create clones of past Sonic villains, including a clone of Shadow, which he then uses to overwhelm and defeat Sonic. Yeah, Infinite actually defeats Sonic. After this happens, he captures and holds him prisoner aboard the Death Egg, where he is tortured for 6 months straight. Saying all this out loud is making me realize how dark of
Yeah.
a concept Sonic Forces is. Like, in
It
execution,
is
it's
pretty
poor as
messed
hell,
up.
but the idea of Sonic being captured and then tortured for half a year is really morbid for a kid's game. You couldn't really tell if Sonic was being tortured. His reaction to all of it is mild inconvenience, like he has the reaction of someone witnessing their parking spot being stolen. Anyways, while Sonic is kept prisoner, the Eggman Empire succeeds in their conquest to take over the world. The rest of the gang form a resistance, only for Infinite to completely obliterate an entire army of them and leave only one alive to torment, proving his dominance as a force to be reckoned with. The only reason he lets Gadget live is so that he can relish in his fear. His tactic does not rest at destruction and mass murder. Unlike other Sonic villains, he has a fixation over mental torture and mind games, which can prove as a detriment for him in the long run. In my honest opinion, this makes him more terrifying. Okay, to make it clear of just how powerful Infinite is, let's go ahead and tally up his victories over the course of Sonic Forces. Kills E123 Omega, defeats Sonic the Hedgehog and tortures him for 6 months, kills an army of resistance soldiers, takes over 99% of the world with the help of Eggman, defeats Silver the Hedgehog, defeats Sonic the Hedgehog again, created a gravity shift that would result in hundreds of casualties, dozens of other war crimes committed off-screen. So let's go ahead and round up Infinite's kill count to, I don't know, a tillion. And yet pretty much his entire reputation
Real.
among the fanbase is that he is a weakling, and the only evidence shown of that is Zero's mental breakdown. But again, as I have said before, Infinite and Zero are clearly two different people. I know it's just a theory, and I'm probably the only person in existence who will defend this character to such a high degree, but the story makes a lot more sense if you take that into consideration. His actions driven by grief over his fallen squad is what basically leads to him committing rated E10 plus suicide and sacrificing his decaying mental state and giving in to the corruption of the Phantom Ruby, thus becoming Infinite. You see how that makes a lot more sense of a backstory than saying Shadow bullied him, so he became evil. As if it wasn't already established that he was evil to begin with. Okay, let's take a step back for a second and consider another argument people have against Infinite. If he becomes who he is because of Shadow killing his friends, then why is he not going after Shadow and instead going after Sonic? Probably because Infinite believes in eye for an eye. Shadow killed Infinite's friends, so the best case for revenge would be for Infinite to kill Shadow's friends and boyfriend. This doesn't really explain
What
why
the
Infinite
hell?
would spare Sonic's life after defeating him a second time, but just roll with it, okay? They're gonna keep the game PG. Also, ignore the fact that Sonic has been killed in the past. Okay, you know what? Maybe this part of the theory doesn't hold a lot of weight. You want to know what does hold a lot of weight?
An ad.
Your mother. Again, I think Infinite has a lot more interest in breaking people mentally the same way he was broken mentally.
Would've been
Him
a
mass
better
killing
character.
resistance soldiers and civilians is more so him just a little.
I think Infinite is still a good character because he's making a very good point. The Shadow quite literally just murdered the rest of his squad, and then Infinite just became corrupt, like Darth Vader, pretty much.
Eliminating roadblocks in his way, but I still do believe he wants to ultimately kill Sonic and his friends in the end. He just wants to play with them first. That sounded wrong. He just wants to torture them first. I think what Shadow did to Zero is the catalyst to the events of Sonic Forces, and because people tend to judge Infinite through the context of a version of Sonic Forces that only exists in their head, they act as though Infinite started this blood-hungry revenge because Shadow said mean things about him on Twitter. But the actual reality is that Shadow is a remorseless killer who took the lives of people who were of zero threat to him, and then he expected no consequences for doing so, which would only come back to bite him in the ass when Infinite took his friends away from him as well. And Shadow doesn't even remember who Infinite is because of how meaningless his encounter with him was in his eyes. Either that or he just forgot, and hey, it wouldn't be the first time this emo boy lost his memory. Don't get it twisted. I love Shadow. He's amazing. I want to marry him. I want to kiss him. But a pretty common thing I notice when people criticize Infinite's character is that they judge him by comparing him to Shadow, which doesn't work in the slightest. Comparing any character to Shadow, one of the most overpowered characters in the entire franchise, is always going to be unfair, and I think people know this. Of course, Infinite is going to fall short when it comes to the ultimate life form. Okay, what's a good reference I can make? Hang on. Okay. It's like putting Bakugo up against Goku. That's your one anime joke for the entire year, so you better appreciate it. Calling Infinite weak and pretending that he is a pathetic villain is hilarious, considering he has defeated Sonic twice and tortured him for 6 months. Like, are you then implying that Sonic is weaker than Infinite? Why do you love Sonic so much then? He lost to the weakest villain twice! At the end of Sonic Forces, Infinite is finally defeated by Sonic and friends due to a series of mistakes that would eventually come back to haunt him. During his fight with Silver, he drops a prototype of the Phantom Ruby, which would then come into possession of Gadget, who would use it to deflect most of Infinite's powers. This would all culminate in Infinite exhausting the power of his Ruby and pushing it far past the desired limits. Once he loses control of it, he is then consumed by the original Phantom Ruby and is presumed dead. But not before Sonic makes a speech about how he defeated Infinite with the power of friendship and determination or some bullshit, I don't know.
Possible. I cannot be defeated.
Wrong, loser.
You're a loser, babe. Now, even
my
though
God.
Infinite is implied to be dead, canonically he is still alive. The reason why we know this is that after the events of Forces, he sends a message to Eggman, which is a folder containing gay porn of Sonic and Shadow. No, I'm not joking. That's literally how we know he's still alive.
Oh, I just got a message here from Infinite. It's a file called Sonado.
No, don't open that!
After Forces, Infinite doesn't play a major role in the series beyond this point and is given the Silver treatment, occasional mentions, but no real appearances apart from mobile games. Truly a fate worse than death. Infinite's reputation as a character within the fandom is pretty poor, mostly because of his association with the second worst game in the series, but the biggest reason for why I consider him to be the best villain in the entire franchise is that he has something that other villains don't have. Depth. Infinite's path to becoming who he is a direct result of the actions of one of the main characters. Shadow killing people that were no threat to him whatsoever did nothing but guarantee backlash in the
Real.
form of Infinite. Even if we knew next to nothing about the Jackal Squad, what we do know is that they were important people in Zero's life, and witnessing Shadow slaughter them in cold blood would be the catalyst to him enacting revenge and becoming Infinite. Naughty Dog then saw its plotline and decided to copy it for The Last of Us Part 2. My point is that Infinite as a character has a lot more depth than people want to pretend. He is one of the only sympathetic villains in the entire franchise. Like most other villains either just pop up out of nowhere and want to kill Sonic from the get-go, or are eldritch horrors beyond human comprehension that want nothing more than the destruction of humanity. Eggman just wants to build a theme park. Infinite is a character who can only exist with the help of one of Shadow's greatest flaws, that being his lack of empathy and remorse. While it's already established that Eggman is in possession of the Phantom Ruby when all of this happens, I have my doubts that Zero would give in to the corruption if it wasn't for Shadow killing his friends. I think Eggman would be content with just using the Phantom Ruby to continue brainwashing Zero and his squad. Alright, now since we are talking about both Shadow and Infinite, I'm just gonna come out and say it. They have a lot more in common than people think. Both lost important people in their life, both are fueled with vengeance against the world, and both shop at Hot Topic. But while Shadow was able to snap out of his initial spite and self-loathing, Infinite never did. He is in many ways the bad-ending version of Shadow. He has no friends or loved ones left
True.
alive and instead decides to corrupt himself in order to become a weapon of mass destruction and nothing else. And just like how people initially made fun of Shadow for being edgy over a decade ago, people have since moved to making fun of Infinite for the same reason. I know a lot of the people pushing the anti-edgy Shadow propaganda, as I call it, were YouTubers that loved punching down on the Sonic franchise. But believe me when I say that it's not just them. I remember Sonic fans going along with that trend as well, and it's just funny seeing the fandom collectively make fun of Infinite and how edgy he is, while not realizing that him and Shadow are a lot more alike than they think. Give it a few years though, I'm sure once Sonic Forces reaches nostalgia status, then people who never played the game will talk about how much of a misunderstood and underrated masterpiece the game is, when in reality it is the most 4 out of 10 video game ever made. Shadow and Infinite also have badass theme songs that fall under the category of edge slop. That's not a word. People have since moved on from laughing at Shadow's theme to loving it, and meanwhile people are making fun of Infinite's theme for being edgy.
I
Like,
Infinite
okay,
Scene.
I hope this justifies me listening to the entirety of all vocal tracks for the Shadow the Hedgehog game, because I can say without a shadow of doubt, that the music in the game is a gazillion times more edgy than Infinite's one theme song. Shadow the Hedgehog came out around a time where rock music was in an awkward period of late nu metal and
Shit,
pop
next
punk,
year's
meaning the
supposed to
original
be 10
songs in
years
that
old.
game are peak
Dang.
examples of the phrase, "ow the edge."
No more gods, no more graves. Are you friend or fiend? No more life, no more death. Somewhere in between.
Man, this really is what it's like when worlds collide. In 2005, albums like All the Right Reasons, 10,000 Fists, The Poison, Lost and Found, Hypnotize, Mesmerize, and With Teeth had all come out at this point. And before that, in 2004, we had albums like Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses, We Are Not Alone, Recoil, and This Type of Thinking. Now, I'm not saying that this had an influence on the type of music that would be in this game, except I am. But if you were making a game about an edgy hedgehog and you had to include original rock music, then of course you would get Power Man 5000 to do a song for the game. And look, I'm not saying that these songs are bad. I'm not saying all of these songs are bad, but my point is that the song Infinite is not any worse than I Am All of Me.
It's still peak. Okay, but it's actually good though.
Like, if Infinite is a bad song because of how edgy it is, then boy do I have news for you! Infinite's theme came out the same year as Concrete and Gold, Vessels, How Did We Get So Dark, Wolves, Outrageous Now, and One More Light. It's actually a really good album. People are just mean. By the time Sonic Forces came out, the scene for rock music was vastly different than it was in 2005, and nu metal was a thing of the past. I mean, look, it's not like we're gonna get Hoobastank in this game. I have been told that the lead singer of Hoobastank sings the song Fist Bump, which is in Sonic Forces, and that I must apologize to all 3 Hoobastank fans that exist. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not a perfect person. There's many things I wish I didn't do, but I continue learning. Infinite is still a song, however, that fits under the genre of nu metal while still
Nah,
feeling
he's
new.
a peak villain.
So then the song comes out, it's in the game, and then people are saying that it's dubstep. Have you guys not heard a nu metal song before? Okay, there's this band I like. You probably haven't heard of them. They're pretty underground. They're called Linkin Park. They made that one song that's like, I've become so numb. But you might know them best for, It Starts With One Thing. They were one of the biggest nu metal bands in the early 2000s, and moving into the 2010s, they released one of my favorite albums of all time called Living Things. The album had them blend a lot more electronic instrumentals into their normal formula, and yeah, I'm sorry, but this album is better than Hybrid Theory. What I'm saying is, if Infinite was on Living Things or even Meteora, it would not feel out of place. It felt pretty obvious to me that Infinite had very heavy Linkin Park inspiration, so seeing people boil the entire song down to edgy dubstep grinds my gears. Like, I get it, people have different music tastes, but we should not be having an edginess competition against Shadow when it comes to music, because No More Gods, No More Graves wins every single time. Sorry about the notification on my phone, I just got a message from Yuji Naka telling me to keep making this video. One of the biggest things I notice when it comes to discussion about Infinite is that people tend to judge him not off his actual character, but off a version of him that only exists in their heads. And I think a lot of that reason is why the Sonic fanbase is just permanently stuck with rose-tinted nostalgia glasses. This is the case with pretty much everything that came out 15 years ago. People look at it a lot better because they have fond memories of it and judge it objectively off that, when that's not how it works. For example, people believe Sonic X was the definitive adaptation of Sonic the Hedgehog solely because they grew up with the show, and the reality being it's a very mid show that has pretty lackluster writing with some hype moments. Or like how people believe Sonic R is a genuinely good racing game when in actuality they just like the music, or when people started saying Sonic 06 was a good game because they got gaslit into thinking that by a fan project that changes literally everything about the game and pretends it's still the same thing. I have nostalgia for Sonic 06. Yeah, well, I have nostalgia for eating Play-Doh. Doesn't mean it's a good thing. I think a lot of people have that same mentality when it comes to Shadow. The game, not the character. Like, yeah, we can all laugh at the edgy game where Shadow shoots a gun and says damn, but also, like, it's not a good game. It still controls poorly and has a flawed gameplay loop, but people usually forget that because they have nostalgia vision when it comes to stuff like that. And I do too. I have fond memories of that game and the music and the cutscenes in it and trying to get the different endings, but then trying to play it today is like getting hit with whiplash because it's not as good as the version that was in your head. Seriously, go play the game right now. And I'm not talking about playing it on an emulator with a patched mod that fixes everything. No, play the vanilla version of the game and you'll see what I mean. Where the hell am I even going with all this? I guess what I'm trying to say is that even though Shadow the Hedgehog isn't a good game, it still has things about it that I appreciate. The story is really interesting and Shadow's character arc is incredible. Black Doom is an iconic villain and I enjoy him and his Shockmaster voice a lot.
The 7 Chaos Emeralds are needed to demonstrate its full power. They call me the Shockmaster.
The same can also be said for Sonic Forces. Yeah, the game is bad, it's ass, but there's still things about it that I really appreciate, and Infinite is one of those things. And I genuinely do believe that he is the best villain in the entire franchise. Okay, was there anything else I wanted to talk about with this character? He's voiced by Liam O'Brien.
Still thrashing around, I see. You filthy little sewer rat. You might have more fight in you than the other rabble. Let's see how many seconds you last.
Oh no, he's hot!
Forgive me for being a little uncouth, but Liam O'Brien has one of the hottest voices I've ever heard. That's it. That's all I wanted to say about Infinite's voice.
Conclusion.
So why exactly did I want to make this video? Well, for starters, I want to hopefully create more fans of this character because it feels pretty lonely being like one of the only Infinite fans in existence, but I also wanted to find an excuse to talk about this character in depth and why I love him so much. The Sonic franchise right now is at a level of popularity that hasn't been seen since the 90s, and the movies have a lot to do with that, so I'm positive that a lot of people discovering this video are going to be newer fans of the series. And if that's the case, then let me be the first to introduce you to Infinite, and not the people who say that his entire character is a joke, because it's not true. I hope we can see more of this character in the future, because he deserves a second appearance as a villain, and if this video can create at least one new Infinite fan, then I can feel like that this was worth doing. Also, he doesn't appear in Shadow Generations. Like, what the f***? Okay, you don't allow him into the game, but you allow Mephiles and Big the Cat into the game? How are they more important to Shadow?